Jesus Christ. Again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
There we go. Now you're awake. Thank you for coming today. I know it's a beautiful day outside, very wet. So we are very thankful that you guys took the time to come here today. So as always, we have a lecture done by Marcio that's going to talk about the Spirit's book. But before we start that, Teresa is going to do the initial reading and the prayer for us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I will make you repeat, don't worry. By the book Happy Life by Divaldo Pereira Franco, by the Spirit of Joana de Angelis. Nobody reaps in another's field when it comes to moral values. Everyone is his own heir. Immortal spirit that he is, he evolves from stage to stage, like a student in the school of love. There, he repeats the lesson when he errs and gets promoted when does it right. In this way, in one existence, he picks up where he left off in the previous one, corrects what was wrong or begins a new experience. Pain, however, may force him to carry out what he does not accomplish out of love. So let us all now connect our hearts and our minds to God our Creator, to Jesus our Master, and to all the benefactors that are here present today. And we would like to show our gratitude for being here once more to learn from the teachings of the gospel that Jesus brought to us. And we ask our benefactors here to help us on this process of enlightenment. So when we leave here today, we all can bring a little bit of this light that shines inside of us to all of those that are out there. We also would like to ask benefactors to enlighten and guide Marcio during this lecture so he can help us to understand a little bit more of this lesson. And so be it.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Pleasure to be here again. I hope it turned okay.
Did you raise the lecture?
It's all here. It's all here. All right. So they gave to me the topic, the Spirit's book, which it's not only it would be hard to talk about the Spirit's book only one lecture. It's a lot to be said about this book, right? So I'm gonna talk very high level about it, but you can join us on Wednesdays. We are just starting to read again the Spirit's book. The Spirit's book. As you know, on Wednesdays we read a little bit, we study, we discuss, read a lot of quiz, and we go part by part, every single part of this book. We're not skipping anything, including the introduction, which will be the main part that I'm going to discuss today with you guys, okay? So join us on Wednesdays. We can go through much more details. We're going to see a little bit what the Spirit's book is. And we cannot talk about the Spirit's book without talking about Spiritism and without talking about Kardec, right? The introduction of the Spirit's book, it talks a lot about, some concepts that is important for us to know, some how everything gets started on Spiritism, so we can go and understand everything else that comes to the Spirit's book. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about when this book was published. It was published in April 4th, 1857. So some historical facts about that time. The 19th century was one that many spirits has incarnated to bring innovation. And then we can say that for all areas, you know, from health, to technology, business models. A lot of different was created at that time. If you recall from our studies at school, it was a boom of new things happening, right? We transformed the world at that time. And that didn't exclude spirituality, right? So it's interesting to see that all of those spirits incarnated with all that knowledge, and then we have Kardec coming incarnate on Earth on that period, and then in 1857 he published the Spirit's book. Okay, so many things happened at that time. Just for curiosity, in August 1856 we have the Neanderthal fossils being found in Germany. We have the mass-produced steel process being fermented, so we can have all the modern things that we have today, right? The first oil refinery in Romania in 1856. Ottawa was selecting December 31st as the capital for Canada in the same year that we have the Spirit's book being published. You know, Charles Darwin publishing his studies about the origin of species and the natural selection that we all heard about, right? This was interesting for me, you know. Heat as a form of energy. It seems so obvious, right? And like we always learn in our excuse me, our early ages about that, and then it was new at that time, right? In those years. So again, a lot of things happening, and it wouldn't be different with, you know, religion, right? We now learning a different way to see, thank you, to see how we deal with our moral values, our religions, you know. So Kardec is putting together as educator that book for us. So let's talk about Kardec a little bit, and I'm gonna do that using the Spirit's book. So this version that we have published by the HC Americas. There is there is a preface from one of Blackwell's that talks a little bit about Allan Kardec, and not a little bit, you know, that's a few pages, but I'm gonna read a few pieces just for us to remember who Allan Kardec was, okay? Because that, knowing his background before Spiritist, before everything that he put together, will help us to understand how these books was, especially well, all of them, how he wrote all of these books, okay? So she says, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, better known by his pen name Allan Kardec, for the Spiritists, right, was born in Lyon on October 4th, 1804, into an old family of Bourg-en-Bresse, which for many generations has been honorably distinguished in the magistracy and at the bar. Educated at the Institution of Pestalozzi in Yverdon, he acquired at early age the habit of investigation and the freedom of thought, of which his later life was destined to furnish to striking an example. Endowed by nature with a passion for teaching, he devoted himself from the age of 14 to aiding the studies of those of his schoolfellows who were less advanced than himself. So, Kardec, with if you search for Pestalozzi, you're gonna see a lot of new ways of educating that he brought, and Kardec was part of that studies, right? He was you can say a disciple of Pestalozzi, you know, and continue his working and applying his methods of teaching into his life, and even later we're gonna see that he opened a school with his wife, right? So the way that he thinks help us to understand the work that he did in Spiritist. You know, it's very logical the way that it is. It's a very educational. It's very simple to understand most of the things that we have in these books, right? Because of the way that he was educated to educate others, right? And she continues. Born in a Catholic country, but educated in a Protestant one, as a mere boy, he began to meditate on the means of bringing about unite of belief among the various Christian sects, a project of religious reform at which he labored in silence for many years, but necessarily without success, since the elements of desired solution were not in his possession at the time. So he was Christian. He knew about Jesus. He knew about all the Bible and the New Testament, all the teachings that Jesus brought to us, but not as a spiritist. And he was saying, you know, we need to bring some unity to it. And one of the key things on spiritist, and you're gonna see one of the questions, I don't remember which one, but he asked the question, is spiritism replace religions? And the answer from the spirit is no, not at all. You know, it can bring some knowledge, can bring some awareness, but it's not replacing any religion, right? And it's interesting that he said, she says, but necessary without success, right? So he was trying to do something about it, but it never happened. He couldn't complete that that job, that work that he was trying to do. Okay? And then she says, around 1850, when the phenomenon of the table turning was grabbing the attention of Europe and ushering the order phenomenon since known as Spiritist, he quickly divined the real nature of those phenomena as being evidence for the existence of an order of relationship that had until then been suspected rather than known. Those that unite the visible and invisible world. So he was trying to bring some knowledge, some unity in the different Christian religions, and then he learns about the turning tables. And from entertainment to a serious communications to a serious work and, you know, trying to bring new things, he divined, how she described it, he divined the turning tables. So it was not, I don't know, I remember every time that I talk about the turning tables, I remember when I was a teenager that at school we were playing with the glass and asked those questions. Does this person like that person? Am I succeed on this? Or what we sometimes, we see people going to psychic to know about their careers, etc. So that's much more entertaining than anything else, right? The serious communications is when we get the message, when we get information that can really change our lives, right? And then there is a conversation between, once he start knowing more about and have these conversations, more serious conversation with spirits, he has an insight and he shares with his wife, Amelia, and he says, it is a most curious thing. My conversations with the invisible intelligence have completely revolutionized my ideas and convictions. The instruction thus transmitted constitute an entirely new theory of human life, duty, and destiny, which appears to me to be perfectly rational and coherent, admirable, lucid, and consoling, and intensely interesting. I have a great mind to publish these conversations in a book, for it seems to me that what interests me so deeply might very likely prove interest to others as well. So he putting together all these questions, he putting together all these communications that he had, will help him to complete what he has been thinking about and trying to unite the Christian religions, right? And if we think about some missionaries that came and is doing great work, you know, many of them start with this idea and it starts in the right moment, it happens, right? That's what happened with Kardec. He had that thing in his mind. He knew that he had to do something, and then finally the time comes. And the spirits tell him, I'm not going to read, but the in this preface, it talks about the spirits telling him, you know, you're going to publish it, but you're going to call this the Spirit's book, you know, and you're not sign with your name, you're going to sign with Allan Kardec, you know. So the Spirit was telling him, all right, this is not your work, this is ours, right? So it will make him very clear, and Kardec, being very humble, he put himself in his place and say, okay, I'm gonna do it, and he explained many times in all the books. So he says it's not my job, it's not my work, it's not me, it's others, right? She also says soon after its publication, he found the Parisian Society of Psychological Studies, of which he was president until his death. So he opened a spirit center just like this, you know, in Paris at his time, and you know, he kept doing all the work. Kardec was not himself a medium, and was therefore obligated to avail himself to the mediumship of others in maintaining the spirit communications from which they were vocal. The theory of life and duty so immediately connected with his name and labors that is often erroneously supposed to have been the produce of the single mind or of the spirits in immediate connection with him. So again, they're very smart, right? When they put in Kardec, so you're Kardec, you go, you're going to do this, but you're not going to be the medium. Because otherwise, people would say, oh, this is just he's saying, right? It's not one person. It needs to be a lot of different people working together to make spiritism to happen, right? And it's very smart not having Kardec as the medium doing everything. Otherwise, it could bring a lot of I'll say complications to spirituals, right? A little bit about Kardec as a person. So she says, devoid of ambition, indifferent to luxury and display, the modest income he had acquired from teaching and from the sale of his educational works, sufficient for the simple style of living he had adopted, and allowed him to devote all the profits arising from the sale of his Spiritist book and from the review Spiritist to propagating the movement he initiated. So, similar to what many spiritists have been doing, and wisely, right? Because we know that mediumship is not to be sold. So everything related to spirituals, every single penny that he got out of it, he gave it back to spirituals, continue propagating it, right? That's the same thing that everyone who is trying to bring awareness about spiritism should be doing, not getting any profit out of it. Okay, and almost at the end, she says about his passage from the earth to the Spiritist work, which with which he had so closely identified himself, was instantaneously painless and without a single or without a sign or a tremor, a most peaceful falling asleep and reawaking, a fit ending for such a life. So, with all his knowledge about spiritism, more about even more about the spiritual world, making that transition, right, from incarnate to discarnate very simple for him. You know, I don't know you guys, but sometimes I think about it. Am I ready for discarnation? How do I feel when that happens? You know, and I'm far away from to be as Kardec as, you know, calm and feeling that everything will be fine. You know, and though we know about it, that I think that's an exercise that we need to go through. You know, thank God we have time. Okay, so that's a little bit about Kardec. Again, I just read a little piece of it. And advertising again our studies on Wednesday. We're doing exactly this. Read the entire introduction. Okay. So let's talk about the Spirits book per se. So this is a part of the introduction 19.3. The first event to be observed was the movement of various objects, popularly called table turning or the dance of the tables. So all those table turnings started in America. Started in the sense that they start hearing about it in America, and it was quickly spread through Europe. But we all know that this kind of communications has been there forever, right? Since the human is there, we have information from different cultures having these communications, etc. But it was studied and put in more serious way in that time when Kardec was that. And then continues. It was met with much disbelief at first, but the multiplicity of the experience soon left no doubt as to its reality. So, yes, as I said in the beginning, right, we started this as something for entertainment, and then it bring to more serious thing. But that in that beginning, all that entertainment that was done at that time, bring a lot of fraud and people faking the phenomena, right? And it was more about not understanding it, the purpose of all of that, than anything else, right? So it's in our ignorance at that time, we just use it for fun and we make mistakes around that. But Kardec, facing it and studying it, and try to understand all the causes of that, he changed that from entertainment to a serious studies, right? The next item 4, he talks about the first intelligence manifestations occurred by means of a table that moved and struck the floor with one leg a certain number of times. Later, however, more highly developed responses were receiving use the letters of the alphabet. So the beginning was very simple questions, yes and no. Imagine how many questions we would have to, if the answer was just yes or no for the Spirit's book, the book would be 4, 5, 10 times bigger than it is today. But they have evolved from that, from yes or no to, depending on the number of knocks, it would be a different letter, and then it increased the time, probably increased the time to get a communication completed, but more complex messages, right? And I thought interesting that he brought in this item that the word spirit start to be used when a question Kardec did, or the Spirit Center did, ask about the nature of the communicator. At that point they were not calling them a spirit. They probably said a ghost or any other less meaningful word. But the word spirit was brought by the spirits, right? I thought that was very, very interesting. And then it was the spirits that suggested to, okay, now instead of you guys using this knock system, just put a pen in a basket and we're gonna make it even easier, right? In Spirit's book, it also says that suggestion doesn't came, it was not given to Kardec, and Kardec started saying, hey everyone, go in and use a pen in a basket so we can make the communication. It was the other way around. It was the spirits telling many different locations in America, in France, in many other countries, saying, hey guys, use a pen in a basket, and then you're gonna have a better communication. So it's all coming from the spiritual word telling us how to do it. So there probably was Jesus there. Hey, you guys, Let's make it easier. Right? Later he says about the questions, right? A complex question requires preliminary and supplementary ones in order to be answered clearly. So again, the Spirit's book has 1,019 questions. Most are questions. There are some of them there are items that Kardec wrote something, or even a spirit comments something. So, but majority of them are questions. So over 1,000 questions to get to the answers that we want to know about, right? And as I said, Kardec was an educator, so he knew how we would think, right? And so he put everything in a logical way for us to read, and it couldn't be different as educator, right? And it's interesting that if you think about it, some questions are kind of repeating, right? So it's like asking the same question in a different way, so to see what the Spirit would answer. And I spent some time the Spirit's answer like this: I have already told you. Don't you remember when I said this and that? So it's we laugh all the time. And also here when we're doing our studies, we stop, we read something and we stop, we start discussing, and then someone bring a comment that or a question, and then we start discussing that question, and okay, let's resume the reading here, and then when we read, oh, here, it was just next to the answer to that question, right? That happens all the time. Because Kardec, as educator, he knew what would be the next question that we would have, right? So he organized that in a way that it would make it easier for us, right? Then he says on 99, we will focus only on the right obtained with the help of a pencil attached to some object such as a small basket, a planchette, etc. That's something that also caught my attention when preparing this lecture. You know, we have read this book already, but I didn't got this, right? I didn't notice this before this lecture. So it's very interesting how careful Kardec was selecting the message to be added to the book. And again, as we said before, right? It's Kardec trying to make sure that people would believe in what is there, right? For us as spiritists for a while, I don't know if there was anyone that is recent became spiritists, but for those who has been studying it, you know, writing communications for the medium, we're fine with that. We don't doubt that anymore, right? But at that time, for everybody who was starting spiritism, right, it was a good idea, you know, that he select those messages that it was not writing by a medium per se, because it would bring credibility to the message, saying, well, this message was not, could not be something that the medium would write and would fake, right? Because the communication through the basket or the planchette would be much. It would need the energy of the medium, and he was not. There was no way that he could manipulate the basket, right? And Kardec says this kind of manifestation quite obvious to those who have deeply investigated the subject. So those studying spiritism, as I said, that would be, you know, no, I don't need the basket. It's fine. I'm fine with the medium write down the message. Right? So he took care that even that aspect for people, you know, to trust in the communications that it was bringing there. Then item 9 again. High order spirits do not concern themselves with the form at all. For them, the sense of the thought itself is everything. Another important item, right? Because a lot of disbelievers would say, oh, this word was misspelling, or I don't, this communication does not make sense for me because of this or that word, this expression, right? And the reality is that if you think about it, first of all, right, the way that someone expresses him or herself may be interpreted by different people in different ways, right? One example, one day we were here reviewing the message that we got on our mediumship meeting here, and we were reading a message, and we were all agreeing on something, and then someone else said something else, like, so, I understood this word in a different way. If you go to the dictionary, you can see the different meaning of the same word, right? And that brought a different perspective to the exactly same paragraph. Not the entire message, the message was very clear, but that particular paragraph brought a little bit more with a different view on that word. So that was one thing. The way of the Spirit, the Spirit will express, and who is reading may bring a different understanding of the same message, right? So Kardec has to put extra effort to select the best message to put in these books, because it's not that this message was, one question, one answer, and just one medium provide that. No, he was getting message from everywhere around the world, understanding what, comparing the answers, and for sure he got some message that was very good, but he has to disregard because of a word here, a word there, that could bring some confusion for people, right? And then we can also, don't forget that the mediumship is not only the Spirit bringing the message, but also there is the influence of the medium as well. We know that this mediumship needs to happen with two parts. It's two spirits working together, right? The communication happen between the Spirit to the medium, and they need to be two. And the way that the Spirit talks, communicate, it's through thought, right? And how fast is our thought, right? Very fast, right? So the highly evolved spirits probably find very hard to communicate to us, using our imperfect and insufficient words to express their thoughts, right? So that's another thing that we see in some questions, some answers, in fact, on the Spirit's book, that the Spirit says, well, I cannot explain this to you using your words, right? There is a lot of, not a lot, some of the questions that the answer is, the Spirit says, yeah, you can say that because we don't have a better word to express it today, right? So there's this other thing that could bring confusion to people, but Kardec did a great job selecting the best message to us. Okay, so that's a little bit about how all the work was done to get the Spirit's book ready for us. So as I said, we would spend full year talking about the entire Spirit's book. So I'm gonna go quickly about the 4 parts of this book, right? We have the introduction, we have the conclusion, and then the main part of the book is divided in 4. And as Kardec said, he in the introduction, whoever wishes to acquire knowledge about a particular science must study it methodically, starting at the very beginning, and following the chain and development of its idea. So part 1, it's all about the beginning, right? First cause is how it's called. And where everything starts with God, right? So in the first chapter is all about God, and then I'm gonna answer questions. I'm not gonna go through every single question here. It's just some random questions that I put to illustrate what we would find in that chapter. But in part 1, we're gonna talk about God, about the elements of the universe, creation, how we as a Spirit was created, and the vital principle. The vital principle is what gives us life, right? So where everything starts with life, right? And life starts from God. So that's why he started with the first cause, right? Then the part 2 is about the spirit world or the world of spirits, right? And then we're gonna find their answers to many of questions that we have, like, who am I? Spirit, right? why I'm here. So it talks about the incarnation of spirits. You know, what happens when we disincarnate? You know, how we go back to the spiritual world. You know, talks about, you know, why I need to have multiple existence. You know, and why people die in early states. Why there are some people rich and some people poor. Why you have some people that are healthy and others there's not, right? Then continue. How is the life in the spiritual world? So what happened when we disincarnate? Where we go? You know, can we still communicate with those spirits? You know, all right. So I'm there. I have to reincarnate. How is that process is? How is my return to life, right? What happened when we are incarnated in our connection with the spiritual world? Are we here and has no access to the spiritual world again? So we have the emancipation of the soul. And then we talk about the intervention of the spirits in the corporeal world. So what to think about angels, right? What to think about the guardian angels, in fact, you know, or the obsessors, you know, obsessions, what that is, right? And it finished this part with, you know, occupations and missions of spirits. So do we rest in peace? Do we go and just rest while you're there? You know, where's the work is really happening, here or there, right? And the three kingdoms. So are plants and animals the same as the human beings, right? One thing, back to the part one that I forgot to mention, we can learn a lot about the creation as well in the book Genesis, right? That Kardec put together. If you think about these 5 books, think about the Spirit's book being the core of spiritism with everything, and then the other 4 kind of developing or go a little bit deeper on parts of the Spirit's book, right? Then we go to part number 3, that's the moral laws. The moral laws is questions a little bit more, not 100%, but a little bit more connected to the religion part. You know, we see a lot of connections between that piece with the gospel according to Spiritism. And the way to read this is to think about all these laws as a way for us to behave, you know, how we should live our lives while incarnating, right? So sometimes we think about, do we have a manual to come and while incarnate? Well, here's an example, right? One book that can help us to live our lives. So put all of that in our day to day, and then we're gonna see how that manual could be, right? And then part 4 is about hopes and consolations. So our earthly joys and sorrow and future, you know, when we disincarnate, right? So this part is answer questions like, I'm suffering so much. Why? Right? Why me? Why now? Why do I need to go through it? And again, another book that could go and go deeper on this is the book Heaven and Hell, that expand that knowledge. And it's nice because the part 2 of the Heaven and Hell is a bunch of different examples, you know, incarnated spirit, when they discarnate, what happens, right? So it's a very nice way to see that, you know, why we're here, how we deal with our problems while we're here, and what happened depending on what we did, right? So that's about the Spirit's book. So few questions for us to reflect about and think a little bit is, one of them that I in the research that I brought is it all new to us? This is the first time that we are hearing. So when Kardec put together all of this, as a revelation, revolution that was happening that time in religion. Was that the first time that we're hearing all of this? And the question 621, there is the question, where is God's laws written in the Colossians? So clearly, it's not the first time that we are listening about it. Clearly, Spiritism is not bringing new things to us, right? It may be different from what we have while incarnated her, right? So let's remember the law of progress. In the right time, messages came for us, right? And then the follow-up on this question is, why does it have to be revealed to them? Because they have forgotten and disregarded. But God has made it for them to remember it. So everything that we need to know is in our conscience, in terms of how we behave, how to live our lives. And it's there. The problem is that we forget. We tend to, I don't remember, I forgot that I had to do this. Or we ignore it, right? We know that we should go to this way, to the right way, and we decide to go to the left, So we are ignoring our own conscience. They're telling us what to do, right? But God is good and willing to help us, willing us to remember, and every time He's bringing a message to us, right? Sometimes it's through revelations like the Spirit's book, the Spiritism for us. Sometimes it's book, music, a word from a friend. There is the message that God has given to us. So we connect again with Him, connect again with His laws, right? And at the Gospel according to Spiritism, the introduction, Kardec also does a parallel between Spiritism and Socratic philosophies, right? So he compares that and see a lot of things that Socrates was already saying years before, Kardec bring all those teachings and say, hey, this is not new. This is not the first time that we're hearing this. Again, you're just ignoring it. Or sometimes we even change the meaning, right? So we have the prophets, we had Moses, we had even Jesus. How many times we get that message and we say, hey, let me manipulate it a little bit to what I really want, or who I am right now, right? So we keep changing the meaning of those teachings sometimes. Another thing that came to mind while preparing this was, do we need updates to the Spirit's book after over 160 years of its publication? So some people may ask, it's a long time ago. The word has changed a lot since then. Isn't it time to update, get some things new to Spirit's book? And a way of answering it is asking another question to ourselves. Have you understand all the questions already? Are we living already according to the Spirit's book? So if we're not even putting in practice everything, are we ready to something new? Probably not, right? Again, about the law of progress, everything happened in the right time, even those revelations, right? And we know that if we think about from Jesus to Spiritism, it took what? Almost 2,000 years for a new revelation. Do we need to wait 2,000 years again for a new revelation? Probably not, right? With Spiritism, one of the things that we study on the Gospel according to Spiritism, when it talks about the Spiritism, the consoling that is coming to help us, that Jesus promised, Spirit is coming to stay. In the Gospel according to Spirit is very clear, saying that the Spiritism is the consoler that is staying. So It's not going away. So probably we may not need 2,000 years to get new things, but especially because we are now connected to the spiritual world all the time. As we progress a little bit, the spirits may bring a little bit more information to us, right? So maybe we don't need big jumps moving forward. Maybe it will be small jumps as we progress, right? And again, we already said about it, right? The teachings are not different. Moses, Jesus, and Spiritist. The teachings are just adapted to the level of intelligence, the knowledge that we have and understanding. Okay? And to finish this lecture, a question that I heard in preparing for this in another lecture that I watch is, do we live as mortal spirits? I think that's a question for us to take home and think about it. Are we live as immortal spirits? You know, the Spirit's book, it brings to us that we are not just these temporary bodies that we have. We're much more, right? There's way more things out there for us in the spirit world, and much more complex than we think, right? And then studying the Spirit's book, we should learn how to live our lives as a spirit, okay? Not as a human being, right? I mean, as an incarnated person, but as a spirit, what that means, right? To live as a spirit. So reading, studying is just the beginning of our journey, and there is a much longer way for us that's putting all of this in practice, right? So we'll leave you guys with these questions. We live as a moral spirit to reflect every night. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcio. We still have time for questions if anyone would like to say anything or any comments, or anyone online. No? I think one thing that I thought was interesting when you were finalizing and you said, right, like, why don't we need something more updated? You need to think about it and to, like, be careful what you ask, right? If we can't even do half of the book yet, imagine if you ask something more. We're gonna feel so frustrated because it's so hard for us to read through everything that Jesus taught us, and it's still like 160 years and we're still so little into
Chico Xavier
understanding.
has over 400 books,
Yeah,
right?
400 and
Published.
something.
Yeah, so I doubt someone read everything.
I remember when Luis Hu came to visit, he said that he actually made that question to Divaldo. Said, Divaldo, why for so long we have nothing really new coming out? Because even when you think what all the 400 books that Chico brought is actually more, bringing a little more in depth what Kardec already brought it, right? But there's no really new knowledge in there, right? And the answer that Divaldo gave to him and said, how can we bring more knowledge if not even what's out there has been studied? It's not even saying being applied, right? Because unfortunately, even in us as a spiritist, a lot of us have not even read Kardec's books, right? A lot of us who call ourselves the spiritists, but never even had read Kardec. So he said, how can we bring new knowledge if not what it's even there had been studied? People are not taking their time to study. People are not taking their time to really doing like a deeper understanding and studying, right? And we see, and unfortunately, we see that in every single spiritist center, where I remember when we were on the internet talking about with the spiritist centers in States, in here and in Brazil, the answer from everybody is the same. The day of the studies, the spiritist center is empty. The day that's day to take passes or do mediumistic, because in Brazil a lot of the spiritist centers will give mediumistic assistance, then there is a lineup. But when it's time to learn and to really process, the spiritist centers are empty. So that's what Divaldo said, how
how can we bring anything new?
Yeah,
We're not
because
even
you need
study
to
what's
put
down
effort,
there.
right? You need
Exactly.
to come and study. It's not someone giving something to you, it's you doing it, right?
Exactly.
So it's much harder when you have to do it.
Yes.
And that's what I think it's easier for me, at least when we do the study group, because for me it's like you learn faster. You have like 5 different heads thinking on the same thing, and as you said, right?
Incarnated hats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I can see. Thank God. So so imagine, like as you said, when you guys were discussing the letter from the spirits, right? One single word and change the meaning of that. Imagine having 5 different people understanding the same thing. So like I find it so rich when you discuss with others. It's easier to understand and to learn. And we're still struggling. Like it's what, the 7th time that we read the Spirit's book, and I'm still both.
Yeah.
And I'm still like not even understanding half of the book. You learn every time you read it, you get something new, something new. It's like imagine if they bring another book, it'd be like forever to finish.
And also 160 years is not that much. It's what, like 3-4 incarnations? Like if you think about it, did you evolve that much to like in one incarnation to say, oh, now I'm perfect or something like that?
Yeah.
Exactly. 160 years may sound long, thinking about our lives, but in eternity, 106 is not even a blink of eye.
It's a couple hours.
Not even there, right? So in eternity is nothing, absolutely nothing.
Sure.
And then we don't learn that fast. We're very slow learners.
It's like Chico that touched the book and read the entire thing.
Yeah, I wish, right?
Yeah, imagine. Anyway, any more questions, comments? No? Okay, so thank you very much. We'll get prepared for our passes. Thank you for those who join us online. Hope to see you next week.